The knife pressed cold against her throat, the masked man's breath hot on her neck as rain hammered the alley behind the hotel. Amara's heart slammed against her ribs, her tray of empty glasses scattered across the wet pavement, but then a voice cut through the storm like thunder. "Stop!" The single word carried such command that even her attacker hesitated, and when she turned her head slightly, she saw him, a man in an expensive suit stepping from the shadows, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her forget she was about to die. Something shifted in that moment, something neither of them could name, and when he moved toward them with lethal grace, Amara knew her life would never be the same. Welcome to StoryForge TV, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. David Okonkwo was not a man who frequented hotel back alleys at midnight. As the CEO of Okonkwo Industries, one of the largest conglomerates in West Africa, his world consisted of boardrooms, private jets, and luxury penthouses. But tonight, restlessness had driven him from his suite at the Golden Rose Hotel, and something, perhaps fate, had led him down the service corridor and out into the rain. When he heard the scream, his body moved before his mind caught up. He rounded the corner and froze. A woman in a waitress uniform was pinned against the wall by a man twice her size, a blade gleaming at her neck. Her eyes were wide with terror but also defiance, and even in that moment of danger, David felt something crack open in his chest. He had seen beautiful women before, had dated models and socialites, but this woman, with her curves straining against her uniform and her natural hair plastered to her face by rain, this woman made him forget how to breathe. "Stop," he said again, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. The attacker spun around, knife still raised, and David saw the desperation in his eyes. Whatever this man wanted, it was not worth dying for. David took another step forward, his hands loose at his sides, his expression cold. "I will give you 3 seconds to let her go." The man's eyes darted between David and the woman, calculating odds, weighing risks. David began counting. 1. 2. Before he reached 3, the attacker shoved Amara aside and bolted into the rain, disappearing into the maze of alleys behind the hotel. David did not chase him. His attention was fixed entirely on the woman who had collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. He moved to her side quickly, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching. "Are you hurt? Did he cut you?" Amara shook her head, her hand pressed to her throat where the blade had been. "No. I'm fine." Her voice was shaky but steady, and when she finally looked up at him, David felt that strange crack in his chest widen. Her eyes were dark and deep, filled with unshed tears but also strength. She was not the kind of woman who broke easily. He found himself captivated. "Let me see," he said softly, reaching for her hand. She hesitated, then let him pull her fingers away from her neck. There was a faint red line but no blood. He exhaled in relief. "You are lucky." Amara let out a bitter laugh. "Lucky? Yes, that is exactly what I am." She pushed herself upright, brushing rain from her face, and David noticed the tremor in her hands. He wanted to reach for her again, to steady her, but something in her posture warned him off. She was already rebuilding her walls. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know what would have happened if you had not come." David shook his head. "Don't think about it. Are you working tonight?" She nodded. "I am a waitress here. I was taking the trash out when he grabbed me." David's jaw tightened. "Does your manager know what happened?" Amara hesitated. "No. And I would prefer if it stayed that way. I need this job." David frowned. "You were attacked. The police should be called. The hotel should provide security." Amara shook her head firmly. "Please. No police. No security. I just want to forget this happened." David studied her for a long moment. There was something she was not telling him, some reason she feared attention more than danger. He wanted to press, to demand answers, but he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "Fine," he said finally. "But you are not going back to work tonight. Let me take you home." Amara's eyes widened. "I can't. I have tables to serve. I will lose my job if I leave early." David pulled out his phone. "What is your manager's name?" 20 minutes later, Amara sat in the passenger seat of David's sleek black car, still trying to process what had just happened. He had called the hotel manager, a man named Mr. Chukwu, and within seconds had arranged for her shift to be covered. He had also, somehow, ensured she would face no consequences. Now they were driving through the rain-soaked streets of Lagos, the city lights blurring past the windows. Amara stole glances at him as he drove. He was impossibly handsome, with sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that seemed to see straight through her. His suit was tailored perfectly, his watch probably cost more than she made in a year, and yet he had stopped to help her. "Why? Where do you live?" David asked, breaking the silence. Amara gave him the address of her small apartment in Surulere, a far cry from the luxury neighborhoods where men like him resided. He did not comment, just nodded and adjusted the route on his GPS. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but charged. Amara could feel his presence like a physical weight, could sense him glancing at her when he thought she was not looking. Finally, she could not take it anymore. "Why did you help me?" David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What kind of question is that? Any decent person would have done the same." Amara shook her head. "Not in Lagos. Most people would have walked away." David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I am not most people." Something in his tone made Amara's heart skip. She looked at him fully now, studying his profile in the dim light. There was something about him, something dangerous and magnetic. She had felt it the moment their eyes met in that alley. It was the same feeling she got when standing too close to a flame, knowing she should step back but unable to move. They reached her building, a modest 3-story structure with peeling paint and rusted gates. David parked and turned to face her. "Are you sure you will be safe here?" Amara nodded. "I have lived here for 2 years. I know my neighbors." David did not look convinced, but he did not argue. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "If you need anything, call me." Amara took the card, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent a jolt through her, and from the way his eyes darkened, she knew he felt it too. The next morning, Amara woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the sound of her phone buzzing. She reached for it groggily, then froze when she saw the message. It was from an unknown number. "Good morning. I hope you slept well. David." Her heart started racing. How did he get her number? Then she remembered, the hotel must have given it to him when he called Mr. Chukwu. She stared at the message for a long moment, unsure how to respond. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to pretend last night had been a strange dream. But another part, a part she did not want to acknowledge, wanted to text him back immediately. Before she could decide, another message came through. "I would like to see you again." "Lunch today?" Amara's breath caught. This was insane. She did not know this man. He was clearly wealthy and powerful, and she was just a waitress trying to survive. What could he possibly want from her? But even as she thought it, she knew the answer. She had felt it in the car last night, the pull between them, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. It terrified her. She typed out a response. "I have to work." His reply came instantly. "I will pick you up after your shift. We need to talk." Amara stared at the message, her heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to put distance between herself and this man who made her feel too much. But instead, she found herself typing, "Okay." That evening, David waited outside the Golden Rose Hotel, leaning against his car with his hands in his pockets. He had spent the entire day thinking about her, about the way she had looked at him in the rain, about the strength in her voice even when she was terrified. He had dated plenty of women, had even been engaged once, but none of them had affected him like this. None of them made him want to protect and possess in equal measure. When Amara finally emerged from the hotel, still in her uniform, David's chest tightened. She was beautiful, effortlessly so, and she had no idea. She walked toward him slowly, her expression guarded. "Hi," she said softly. David smiled. "Hi. Are you hungry?" She nodded, and he opened the car door for her. He took her to a small restaurant in Victoria Island, the kind of place that did not require reservations or dress codes. Amara seemed surprised by the choice. "I thought you would take me somewhere fancy," she admitted as they sat down. David shook his head. "I want to talk to you, not impress you." Amara's lips quirked in a small smile. "That is refreshing." They ordered food, and for a while, they just talked. David asked about her life, and Amara found herself opening up more than she intended. She told him about growing up in Enugu, about losing her parents in a car accident when she was 17, about moving to Lagos to start over. She did not tell him everything, there were secrets she could not share, but she told him enough. And David listened, really listened, in a way no one had in years. "What about you?" Amara asked eventually. "What does a man like you do for fun?" David smiled. "A man like me?" Amara gestured at his expensive watch, his tailored clothes. "You know what I mean. You are clearly successful. What do you do?" David leaned back in his chair. "I run my family's company. We deal in real estate, hospitality, and a few other ventures. It keeps me busy." Amara raised an eyebrow. "That is very vague." David chuckled. "I suppose it is. The truth is, I don't have much time for fun. Work consumes most of my life." Amara tilted her head. "That sounds lonely." David met her eyes, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. It was. Until last night. The air between them shifted, charged with something electric. Amara looked away first, her cheeks warming. "David, I don't think this is a good idea." He leaned forward. "What is not a good idea?" "This. Us." "You are," Amara gestured helplessly. "You are you. And I am just a waitress." David's expression hardened. "Don't do that. Don't reduce yourself because of what you do. You are more than your job, Amara." Amara shook her head. "You don't understand. We come from different worlds. This can't work." David reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm, firm, grounding. "Let me decide what can and cannot work. All I know is that I have not been able to stop thinking about you since last night. And I don't think you have stopped thinking about me either." Amara wanted to deny it, but she could not. He was right. She had thought about him constantly, had replayed their conversation in the car over and over. But that did not change the facts. She pulled her hand away gently. "I can't do this, David. I am sorry." She stood, grabbing her bag, but David was faster. He caught her wrist, not hard, just enough to stop her. "Please," he said quietly. "Just give me a chance." Amara looked down at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, and felt her resolve crumbling. She should walk away. She should protect herself. But instead, she found herself sitting back down. Over the next few weeks, David became a constant presence in Amara's life. He picked her up after work, took her to quiet restaurants, and listened as she talked about her dreams. He never pushed for more than she was willing to give, never demanded explanations for the walls she kept around herself. But he was always there, steady and patient, chipping away at her defenses one day at a time. Amara tried to resist. She reminded herself that this was temporary, that a man like David would eventually lose interest. But the more time she spent with him, the harder it became to believe that. He was different from anyone she had ever known, kind but fierce, gentle but possessive. And the way he looked at her, like she was precious, irreplaceable, it made her feel things she had sworn never to feel again. One evening, as they walked along the beach at Lekki, David stopped suddenly and turned to face her. "Amara, I need to tell you something." She looked up at him, her heart already racing. "What is it?" David hesitated, then said, "I am falling for you. I know it is fast, and I know you have reservations, but I need you to know. You are not just a distraction or a passing interest. You mean something to me." Amara's breath caught. She wanted to say it back, wanted to admit that she was falling too, but fear held her tongue. Instead, she whispered, "David, you don't know who I really am." He cupped her face gently. "Then tell me. Show me." I don't care about your past, Amara. I only care about now. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her blood ran cold. It was a message from a number she had hoped never to see again. Time is up, princess. Your father wants you home. David noticed the shift in her expression immediately. What is wrong? Amara shook her head, slipping the phone into her pocket. Nothing. I just need to go. David frowned. Amara, talk to me. But she was already walking away, her mind racing. She had been a fool to think she could escape, to think she could build a life here without consequences. And now, everything was about to come crashing down. That night, David could not sleep. Something was wrong with Amara, he could feel it. The way she had shut down on the beach, the fear in her eyes when she looked at her phone, it all pointed to danger. And David was not the kind of man who ignored danger, especially when it threatened someone he cared about. By morning, he had made a decision. He called his head of security, a man named Emeka who had worked for the Okonkwo family for years. I need you to find out everything you can about Amara Okeke, David said. Where she came from, who her family is, why she is hiding in Lagos. Emeka hesitated. Sir, are you sure? This could open doors you might not want opened. David's voice was firm. I am sure. Do it. 3 days later, Emeka returned with a file. David opened it in his office, his heart pounding. What he read made his blood run cold. Amara Okeke was not just a waitress. She was Amara Okeke, the only daughter of Chief Okeke, one of the wealthiest oil magnates in Nigeria. She had disappeared 2 years ago after refusing an arranged marriage, and her father had been searching for her ever since. David sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. She was not poor. She was not helpless. She was a runaway heiress hiding in plain sight. And he had fallen in love with her without even knowing the truth. The question was, what would he do now? Before he could decide, his phone rang. It was Amara. David, she said, her voice trembling. I need your help. Someone is following me. David was on his feet instantly. Where are you? At the hotel. But David, there is something I need to tell you first. He grabbed his keys. Tell me when I get there. Just stay inside and lock the door. I am on my way. As he raced through the streets of Lagos, David's mind was a storm of emotions. Anger that she had lied. Fear that she was in danger. And beneath it all, a fierce possessiveness that shocked him. She was his. It did not matter who her father was or what secrets she kept. She belonged to him, and he would protect her with everything he had. When he arrived at the hotel, Amara was waiting in the staff room, her face pale. David pulled her into his arms without thinking, and she clung to him like he was the only solid thing in her world. I am sorry, she whispered against his chest. I should have told you the truth. David pulled back just enough to look at her. I know who you are, Amara. Or should I say, Amara Okeke. Her eyes widened in shock. How? David shook his head. That does not matter. What matters is that you are safe. But we need to talk, and you need to tell me everything. Amara nodded, tears streaming down her face. Okay. But not here. Somewhere private. David took her to his penthouse, a sprawling space overlooking the Lagos skyline. Amara had never been there before, and despite everything, she could not help but be awed by the sheer luxury of it. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors, furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. This was David's world, and it was so far from hers. Sit, David said gently, guiding her to the couch. Then talk. Amara took a shaky breath and began. She told him about her father, about the arranged marriage he had tried to force on her, about running away in the middle of the night with nothing but a bag of clothes and her mother's jewelry. She told him about the past 2 years, working as a waitress, living in a tiny apartment, always looking over her shoulder. And she told him about the message, about her father's men closing in. David listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then he said, "Why did you not tell me sooner?" Amara looked down at her hands. Because I was afraid. Afraid you would think I was using you. Afraid you would send me back. Afraid you would stop looking at me the way you do. David stood and began pacing, his hands clenched into fists. You think I would send you back to a man who tried to force you into marriage? You think I would stop caring about you because of who your father is? Amara's voice broke. I did not know what to think. David stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes blazing. Let me make something very clear, Amara. I do not care who your father is. I do not care about your money or your name. All I care about is you. And no one, not your father, not his men, not anyone, is going to take you away from me. Amara's breath hitched. David. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her to her feet. You are mine, Amara. Do you understand? You have been mine since the moment I saw you in that alley. And I will burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you. The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, made Amara's knees weak. She had never felt so wanted, so protected. And in that moment, all her fears melted away. She reached up and cupped his face, her voice barely a whisper. Then keep me safe, David. Because I am yours too. David's control snapped. He pulled her against him, his lips crashing onto hers with a hunger that had been building for weeks. Amara gasped, her hands clutching his shoulders as the kiss deepened, became desperate. All the tension, the fear, the longing, it all poured into that moment. David's hand slid down her back, pressing her curves against him, and Amara felt herself melting, surrendering to something she had been fighting since the night they met. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, David rested his forehead against hers. I need you to trust me, he whispered. Can you do that? Amara nodded, her heart pounding. Yes. Then stay here tonight. Let me protect you. Amara knew what he was really asking, and for once, she did not hesitate. Okay. That night, David held her close, his arms wrapped around her like a shield against the world. They lay in his massive bed, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, and for the first time in years, Amara felt safe. David traced patterns on her shoulder, his touch gentle, reverent. Tell me what you want, Amara, he said quietly. If you could have anything in the world, what would it be? Amara was silent for a moment, then whispered, freedom. I just want to be free to choose my own life, to love who I want without fear. David's arms tightened around her. Then I will give you that. I promise. Amara turned in his embrace, studying his face in the dim light. How? My father is powerful, David. He has connections everywhere. Once he finds me, David's jaw set. Then I will make sure he never does. The next morning, David woke before Amara. He lay there watching her sleep, her face peaceful, her curls spread across his pillow. She was so beautiful it hurt to look at her. And she was his. The possessiveness that surged through him should have scared him, but instead, it felt right. Natural. He had never been a man who shared, and he would not start now. Carefully, so as not to wake her, he slipped out of bed and went to make calls. First, he contacted his lawyer. I need information on Chief Okeke, he said. Everything. His businesses, his associates, his weaknesses. And I need it today. Next, he called Emeka. Double security on the penthouse. No one gets in without my approval. And I want surveillance on anyone asking questions about Amara Nwosu or Amara Okeke. Emeka's voice was grim. Sir, you are making an enemy of a very dangerous man. David's voice was ice. He made an enemy of me the moment he threatened what is mine. When Amara woke, she found David in the kitchen making breakfast. The sight of him, shirtless and relaxed, made her stomach flip. Good morning, he said, smiling at her. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months, Amara admitted. She walked over to him, suddenly shy. David, about last night. We did not, we just. David set down the spatula and pulled her close. I know. And I am glad we waited. When I make love to you, Amara, it will not be because you are afraid or vulnerable. It will be because you are ready, and because you want me as much as I want you. Amara's cheeks burned. The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, so confident, made heat pool low in her belly. I do want you, she whispered. David's eyes darkened. Good. But first, we deal with your father. Over the next week, David worked tirelessly to build a case against Chief Okeke. His lawyers dug into the man's business dealings and found evidence of corruption, bribery, and fraud. It was enough to bring him down, but David wanted more. He wanted to make sure the man could never touch Amara again. Meanwhile, Amara stayed at the penthouse under constant guard. At first, she felt trapped, restless. But David made sure she was never alone. He worked from home when he could, and when he had to go to the office, he called her every hour. At night, he held her close, and though they had not crossed that final line, the intimacy between them grew. They talked for hours, sharing fears and dreams, learning each other's bodies through touch and whispered words. The tension built until it was almost unbearable. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Amara finally asked the question that had been weighing on her. David, why are you doing all of this for me? You barely know me. David turned to her, his expression serious. That is not true. I know you better than I have ever known anyone. I know you are brave enough to walk away from everything for your freedom. I know you are strong enough to survive on your own. I know you have a heart big enough to forgive even when you have been hurt. And I know that I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Amara's eyes filled with tears. I feel the same way. But I am scared. What if my father finds me? What if he hurts you to get to me? David cupped her face. Then he will learn what happens when someone threatens what belongs to me. That night, the tension finally broke. They were in David's bedroom, the air thick with unspoken desire. Amara was standing by the window, looking out at the city, when David came up behind her. His hand settled on her waist, pulling her back against his chest. I can feel you pulling away, he said quietly. Talk to me. Amara closed her eyes, leaning into his warmth. I am just thinking about everything that could go wrong. David turned her to face him. Stop thinking. His lips found hers, and this time, the kiss was different. Slower. Deeper. A promise. Amara's hand slid up his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath his shirt, and David groaned. Are you sure? He asked, his voice rough. Because if we do this, there is no going back. You will be mine, Amara. Completely. Amara met his gaze, her own eyes filled with heat and certainty. I am already yours. What followed was a night of whispered words and shared breaths, of hands exploring and hearts surrendering. David worshipped her body like it was sacred, learning every curve, every gasp, every sigh. And when they finally came together, it was with an intensity that left them both trembling. Amara had never felt so cherished, so desired, so loved. And as David held her afterward, his arms wrapped tightly around her, she knew there was no going back. She was his, and he was hers, and nothing, not her father, not the past, not fear, could change that. The next morning, Amara woke to find David already dressed, his expression grim. What is wrong? She asked, sitting up. David hesitated, then handed her his phone. There was a news article on the screen. Billionaire CEO David Okonkwo linked to missing heiress. Amara's blood ran cold. How did they find out? David shook his head. It does not matter. What matters is that your father now knows where you are. And he is coming for you. Fear gripped Amara's heart. What do we do? David sat beside her, taking her hands. We fight. I have enough evidence to bury your father, but it will take time. In the meantime, I need you to stay here and trust me. Amara nodded, but inside, dread was coiling tight. She knew her father. He would not stop until he got what he wanted. 2 days later, David received a call. It was Chief Okeke. Mr. Okonkwo, the man's voice was smooth, cold. I believe you have something that belongs to me. David's grip on the phone tightened. Amara does not belong to anyone. Especially not you. Chief Okeke chuckled. You think you can protect her? You think your money and your lawyers can stop me? I have been in this game longer than you have been alive, boy. David's voice was deadly calm. Then let me make this clear, Chief. If you come near Amara, if you even think about taking her, I will destroy you. I have evidence of every illegal deal you have made, every bribe you have paid. One word from me, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison. There was a long silence. Then Chief Okeke said, "You are making a mistake. She is my daughter. She will come home, one way or another." The line went dead. David immediately called Emeka. "Triple security. No one gets in or out without clearance. And get Amara out of the penthouse. Take her to the safe house in Abuja." Emeka's voice was tense. "Sir, if you move her, he will know." David's jaw clenched. "I don't care. Just keep her safe." When David told Amara, she refused. "I am not running again," she said firmly. "If my father wants a fight, then we fight together." David shook his head. "Amara, you don't understand how dangerous this is." "I do," she shot back. "But I also understand that I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of hiding. If we are going to do this, we do it together." David stared at her, torn between admiration and fear. Finally, he nodded. "Together. But you stay by my side. Always." That night, David held a press conference. He stood in front of cameras, his expression calm, and dropped a bomb. "Chief Okeke has been using his position and wealth to exploit the system for years," David said. "I have evidence of fraud, corruption, and illegal dealings. This evidence has been turned over to the authorities. And as for his daughter, Amara Okeke, she is an adult who has the right to choose her own life. She is under my protection, and I will not allow anyone to harm her." The room erupted in questions, but David ignored them. He turned and walked off the stage, knowing he had just declared war. Chief Okeke's response was swift. Within hours, men showed up at David's office building, demanding to see Amara. Security turned them away, but the message was clear. This was not over. That evening, as David and Amara sat in the penthouse, surrounded by guards, Amara finally broke down. "I am so sorry," she sobbed. "This is all my fault. If I had just stayed hidden, if I had not gotten involved with you." David pulled her into his arms. Don't apologize for being brave. Don't apologize for wanting a life." He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I would do this 1,000 times over, Amara. You are worth every fight." The next few days were tense. David's lawyers worked around the clock, building their case. Emeka coordinated security. And Amara stayed close to David, refusing to be sidelined. She helped where she could, researching, making calls, even reaching out to old contacts who might have information on her father. Slowly, they began to gain ground. But Chief Okeke was not finished. One night, as David was working late in his study, Emeka burst in. "Sir, we have a problem. Amara is gone." David's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean gone?" Emeka's face was pale. "She said she was going to the kitchen. When the guard checked on her 5 minutes later, she was not there. We have searched the entire building. She is not here." David felt rage and fear collide in his chest. "Find her," he roared. "Search every street, every building. I want her found now." Emeka hesitated. "Sir, there is something else. We found this on her bed." He handed David a note. The handwriting was shaky but clear. "David, I am sorry. My father called. He said if I do not come willingly, he will destroy you. I cannot let that happen. Please do not follow me. I love you. Amara." David crumpled the note in his fist, his vision blurring with fury. "That bastard." He looked at Emeka. "Where is Chief Okeke staying?" Emeka swallowed. "The Grand Palace Hotel. Presidential suite." David grabbed his jacket. "Get the car. We are going now." When David arrived at the hotel, he did not bother with subtlety. He stormed through the lobby, ignoring the shocked staff, and took the elevator to the top floor. Emeka and 2 guards followed close behind. At the door to the presidential suite, David did not knock. He kicked it open. Inside, Chief Okeke sat calmly in a leather chair, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Amara was standing by the window, her face pale but defiant. "Mr. Okonkwo," Chief Okeke said smoothly. "I was expecting you." David's eyes locked on Amara. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "No." "But David." Chief Okeke stood. "But nothing. She is my daughter, and she is coming home with me." David's voice was low and dangerous. "Over my dead body." Chief Okeke smiled. "That can be arranged." He snapped his fingers, and 4 men stepped out from the shadows, all armed. David did not flinch. Emeka and the guards moved forward, but David raised a hand. "No. This is between me and him." He turned to Chief Okeke. "You want her? You will have to kill me first. And trust me, old man, I am not easy to kill." Chief Okeke's smile faded. "You are a fool. Do you think love will protect you? Do you think it will save her?" David took a step forward. "No. But I will." He pulled out his phone and played a recording. It was Chief Okeke's voice, discussing bribes and illegal deals. The man's face went white. "You recorded me?" David smiled coldly. "I record everything. And this, along with all the other evidence I have, is already in the hands of the authorities. By morning, you will be arrested. Your empire will crumble. And Amara will be free." For a moment, Chief Okeke just stared. Then he lunged at David, rage twisting his features. But David was faster. He sidestepped, grabbed the older man's arm, and twisted it behind his back. "It is over," David said quietly. "You have lost." Chief Okeke struggled, but Emeka stepped in, pulling him away. The armed men hesitated, then lowered their weapons. They had no loyalty to a man who was about to fall. Amara ran to David, tears streaming down her face. "You came for me." David pulled her into his arms. "Always. I will always come for you." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Chief Okeke was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud and corruption. His empire collapsed, his assets frozen. And Amara, for the first time in her life, was free. She moved in with David officially, and though the media had a field day with their relationship, they did not care. They were together, and that was all that mattered. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of the penthouse, David turned to Amara and pulled out a small velvet box. "Amara Okeke," he said, his voice steady. "You have turned my world upside down in the best way possible. You have made me believe in love, in fighting for what matters, in building a future. And I cannot imagine that future without you. Will you marry me?" Amara's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling over. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." David slipped the ring onto her finger, a stunning diamond that caught the light, and kissed her deeply. They were married 3 months later in a private ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. Amara wore a dress that hugged her curves perfectly, and David could not take his eyes off her. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, David kissed her like it was the first time, and the crowd erupted in cheers. 6 months after the wedding, Amara stood in the bathroom of their home, staring at the positive pregnancy test in her hand. Her heart raced as she heard David's footsteps approaching. "Amara? Are you okay?" She turned to him, tears in her eyes, and held up the test. "We're going to have a baby." David's face went through a dozen emotions in seconds: shock, joy, wonder, before he swept her into his arms and spun her around. "We're going to be parents," he whispered against her hair. "You have given me everything, Amara. Everything." Amara laughed through her tears. "And you gave me freedom, love, and a family. We did this together." 9 months later, Amara gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Zara, and from the moment David held his daughter in his arms, he knew his life was complete. Amara watched him cradling their child, his eyes soft with love, and felt her heart overflow. This was the man who had saved her in that alley. The man who had fought for her, protected her, loved her unconditionally. And now, he was the father of her child. As they sat together in the hospital room, David leaned over and kissed Amara gently. "Thank you," he whispered. "For trusting me. For loving me. For giving me this life." Amara smiled. "Thank you for seeing me. For choosing me. For never giving up." David rested his forehead against hers. "Always, my love. Always." Years later, as they stood on the same balcony where David had proposed, watching their daughter play in the garden below, Amara reflected on how far they had come. From a terrified waitress in an alley to a woman who had found love, freedom, and family. And David, the billionaire who had thought he had everything, had discovered that the greatest wealth was not money or power, but the woman who had stolen his heart and given him a future worth fighting for. Their love had conquered fear, danger, and impossible odds. And as David pulled Amara close, kissing her under the setting sun, they both knew their story was far from over. It was only just beginning. What lessons did you take from this story? Have you ever met someone who changed your life completely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale of love, danger, and second chances, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to StoryForge TV. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next powerful story. Thank you for watching, and stay blessed.